Welcome back to Used to Sew, a podcast about sewing machines, sewing history, and sewing culture in the past and present. I am your producer and co-host Aradia, daughter of your main host T.R. Kelly, who is here today to talk to you about cases and cabinets. Or, where do you put your sewing machine? We've talked about sewing rooms, but let's think smaller. A sewing machine may only exist to move a needle, but it is similarly bound on the other side by its need to be contained as it moves said needle. Today's episode includes a history lesson about furniture makers in general, Singer's vertical integration in particular, the introduction of plastic and particle board, and the unfortunately distinct stench of featherweight cases. And because we like to motivate you to act on the information in our podcast, we also have tips for fixing featherweight case stench, what to look for with getting a secondhand cabinet, why you should absolutely get a secondhand cabinet, and clues on some particularly interesting finds you might stumble across out there in Thriftland.
Here we are. Thank you for joining us for another fun week here at Used to Sew. You may be able to hear that I'm in a very echoey room here, still cruising about in Eastern Oregon, working on various real estate projects. It's kind of chilly here today. They're expecting snow at the end of the week. And I can't wait for it to snow because then I can sit and sew. Yay! You been sewing anything, Ray? Been doing anything with fabric?
Well, I definitely got out my quilt squares thinking I was going to sew them and then realized that you have to mark them in order to sew that particular step. So I was like, I don't want to mark them. So then I left my sewing room.
You're marking the half square triangle seam allowance things.
So proud of myself for pinning them. And it's like, no, you have to mark them and then pin them. I was like, So I've been working on my jigsaw puzzle of a rhododendron bush instead. Much less frustrating.
Very sort of quilt-like, but in a different way.
It's so frustrating. I've had to brute force this thing so hard. Like, rhododendron bushes are not a predictable picture for a puzzle, so it's been quite infuriating. No. I really should be being driven back to the quilt at this point.
Oh, jeez. Well, in my sewing room, I was, as you all may remember, I got a surprise cat entered my life in June, and I gave up my little cubicle in the RV that had been my craft space, and I gave it up for it to be cat space because litter box and food and water. Well, I just kind of gave it up, and then I'm sitting down at the dining room table and trying to sew on my VS3, and the table's all wobbly, even though it's a hand crank. Randy's like, why don't you go back and revision your little office room again? You know, the cat's not taking up that much space. And I thought about it and I went, oh yeah, duh. So it's a how tall is this? Okay, think of your sewing room. My sewing room is 7 feet by 4 feet by 5.5 feet tall.
That is
it's a closet.
Much smaller than my sewing room.
Oh, I can't wait till my cabin's finished next spring. Anyway, so I went in there and the first thing I did was I took everything out, except for the little shelves that I've already built onto the wall. All the cat stuff, all my clothes, fabric, sewing machines that are in their cases, everything. Poof. What is the primary feature of your sewing room? It's your sewing machine. Where does your sewing machine go? That's the first question. Okay, where does the sewing machine go? Okay, in this space, I'm not going to be sewing huge quilts in this space. I have to take a machine outside for that. Oh, it's going to go, I don't have room for an actual sewing machine cabinet in here. So I'm going to put it on this upside down bookshelf and screw that to the wall and screw this to screw that. The idea being you got to make a stable surface for your sewing machine, whether it's a hand crank or an electric or whatever, because it's heavy. It moves when it's doing things. So that brings us to today's topic, which is cases, bases, cabinets, card tables. Where do you put your sewing machine? Okay. Especially if you're out buying a vintage machine, you might run into just the sewing machine. It's just sitting there. It's a sewing machine. Oh, I can take that home and put it on my kitchen table and sew. Okay, well, if you've got your basic IKEA kitchen table, or pretty much any modern kitchen table I've ever seen, you get that sewing machine on there and you start sewing and it's going to wobble. It's not real stable. We're talking vintage machine here, not a modern plastic one. You've got a vintage machine that you picked up 30 pounds. Not real good. Plus, you know what? That table's not the right height for the sewing machine. Why don't you get a sewing cabinet? Now, back in the old days, sewing machines, when they're first invented, and they're treadle, right? They've got to be on some kind of a cabinet because there's your foot down there. There has to be some frameworky stuff going on. So you've got the very first sewing machine, quote, cabinet was the packing box that Singer's first sewing machine itself came in. It was just a rough wooden packing box. He'd take the machine out, set it on top, and hook up the belt to the pedal mechanism that was inside the box. Very rough, but very effective, right? He could just put the machine in the box, shut the box, put it back on his wagon, take it to the next place where he was going to demonstrate it. So that was all well and good when it's just an industrial experimental thing. But fast forward, 10, 15 years, when you're trying to get people to buy these and put them in their homes, they don't want some rough packing box in there. It's going to go into the parlor because remember, at this point, 1860s and 70s, sewing machines are still very expensive and they're going into houses of people who can afford them, and usually the rest of their furniture looks pretty nice, so the sewing machine's furniture needs to look nice too.
It needs to match.
Yes, it needs to match. This is from a historical page from South Bend, Indiana. I love these little municipal websites that somebody puts together out of love because there's usually not a lot of junk on them, ads and stuff.
Yeah, I love that old school vibe.
Yeah. So this is a short history of the Singer Manufacturing Company and its cabinet making. So this is just the cabinet part. Isaac Singer established his Singer Sewing Machine Company in 1851 near Boston. In 1853, he moved his operations to New York City. In 1872, the main assembly plants were moved to Elizabeth, New Jersey. Apparently, at this time, Singer's sewing cabinets were not built by Singer, but on contract with other manufacturers. Okay, we don't know much about that. But because South Bend, Indiana, was the center of black walnut timber production, it was an excellent location for furniture making.
Oh, all the furniture making, not just sewing machine cabinets, but all the other furniture that the cabinets were going to be matching. Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, Indiana, which is the center of the the old Midwest,
right?
Is just hardwood trees. It's nothing but beautiful hardwood trees, hickory and maple and all this stuff. Black walnut. Several South Bend furniture makers, and they named several, were approached for bids on 5,000 cabinets per month. This would include tables, box covers, and drawers. All those furniture makers who were approached refused to bid. They did not want such small work. All right. By the mid-1860s, Singer realized that in order to massively expand their sewing machine production, they would need to be able to source vast quantities of hardwood timber with which to make cabinets. The company made the strategic decision to open a massive purpose-built factory in South Bend, Indiana, for the mass production of furniture, taking advantage of the large stands of hardwood trees to make cabinets and cases for their sewing machines. This started production in 1868. Okay, so they're making the machines over in New Jersey, in an urban area, factories and all that. But that's not where the trees are. So they have to make their cabinet factory where the trees are. Totally makes sense.
And furniture makers didn't want to include sewing machine cabinets in their lineup. So Singer had to just get into the cabinetry business.
Right. It was too small of an order for these furniture makers. 5,000 little cabinets a month? Heck, we're turning out tables and whatnots and armoires and credenzas and all those old furniture pieces.
Huh. Trippy. You'd think that would be an easy, we'll just pick up this one little order, like whatever, but okay, all right.
No, well, see, they would have to retool a whole line for that, and only 5,000 units a month for these big national furniture companies. Not enough.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah. Same with some of like the early machine manufacturers. Who's gonna do our founding for us? Who's gonna actually cast the iron? Well, that's another thing. Those guys are making locomotive parts and all kinds of stuff. We don't want to make your little treadle stands. So that's why Singer and some of the other big manufacturers actually had their own foundries. The whole vertical integration from our trains bring raw materials to our foundries to cast our pieces. Well, now we're doing the same thing with the cabinets. Okay, we're just going to buy the land, we're going to build a factory there, and we're going to make our own cabinets. We're not going to depend on anybody else.
Wow, I thought it was a point of pride. I had no idea it was a necessity. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, at first they settled along the river in the East Race area. Now, usually a race, like Eugene has a race too. It's a mill race because that's the water wheel that's powering everything.
Right.
We don't have large-scale steam or anything going here. But in 1901, they moved to the western part of the city by the railroad tracks. At that time, they had the largest cabinet factory in the world, employed over 3,000 people. See, what those other furniture companies didn't realize was that the sewing machine itself was just at its infancy at that point, and that was a small order, but they were refusing to see where this was going to go.
Right. That's what I find so fascinating is it's like, but you guys, every household that needs an armoire and a bed frame and a vanity chest and whatever else, they also need a sewing machine. Like it's going to be huge, guys. Think 40 years ahead. Okay. All right.
Oh, no. It's a fad. It's too expensive. Mrs. Customer will never want this. Well, okay, now they're like, wait, we're now the largest cabinet factory in the world, and we employ 3,000 people in South Bend, Indiana. So neener.
Neener indeed.
So we're moving up to, remember, the peak era of sewing machine manufacturing, where it topped out, was about 1913. So we're still on the upswing. Yes, more sewing machines, more cabinets. Yeah. By 1907, 10,000 sewing machine cabinet sets were manufactured per day.
Oh, 5,000 a month's not going to really get us anywhere. Oh, my God.
Gotta love it. Only part of these were completely finished. Many sets were shipped to Scotland in part white. And that's in quote, part white, meaning unfinished and unassembled. Because Scotland doesn't have big forests. Where's Kilbowie getting all their cabinetry from?
Oh, yeah, because they are the whole vertical integration thing, but they had to draw on their North American resources for that one piece.
Now, later, they did build a cabinet shop at Kilbowie, but they were importing the raw lumber from the U.S.
Sure.
Because it was easier, cheaper to import that lumber and build the machines there. And that will factor in our Kilbowie story because it was huge. Okay, of the finished sets, half were sent to Elizabeth, New Jersey to have machines installed and be shipped to the U.S. seaboard, South America, and Asia. So machines were being sent from New Jersey up and down the East Coast, South America, and Asia. Machines were sent from Elizabeth to South Bend to be installed in cabinets there and distributed from there. So isn't that cool? Okay, because these things are heavy and they're delicate. So we're going to ship cabinets to the machines, and then those get exported. And then we're going to ship machines to the cabinets, and those are going other places. Mostly domestic.
Right. That makes sense.
So the cabinet work was done on very fine tolerances in order to make parts interchangeable no matter where they were shipped. The year 1914 was the peak year for production at South Bend. There were 3,000 employees working. In the early years of the 20th century, about 50 million feet of hardwood lumber for cabinets, 20 million feet of softwood lumber for packing boxes, and 10 million feet of walnut, oak, sweet gum for veneer, so the pretty stuff, were being used in the South Bend plant per year. That is a lot of wood.
I am so curious how much of the deforestation of this region is entirely the result of the furniture industry.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I had never thought about how many trees furniture represents at scale, like in the region that makes it? Like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's kind of dark.
I mean, that part of the United States used to be heavily forested.
Oh, man. Wow. Okay.
So all this timber was stockpiled and dried and graded and taken care of in a 20-acre lumber yard adjoining the factory. I'm thinking of my land, which is 30 acres, which is pretty darn big. 20 acres of stacked up lumber yards. Woo!
That's a lot of lumberyard.
Mr. David Polak, a Singer researcher, estimated that 3/4 of all sewing machine cases and cabinets in the world at that time were made in South Bend, Indiana, with a yearly output of 2 million cabinets.
That's so many trees just for sewing machines.
And the packing boxes that they come in.
Yeah. Oof.
Right? These things have to be packed up in these huge crates. That's a whole another bunch of wood there because they're heavy and they're fragile, right? They're getting shipped around on ships and trains. The company continued to make cabinets in South Bend until increased competition and old factory buildings created financial troubles. In 1854, the company left South Bend, and in the 1860s, there was a fire. Buildings were torn down for urban renewal projects.
Wait, you mean 19?
Yeah, 1954. 1954, and in 1960, there was a fire. So it was online for about 100 years. But then, the financial troubles, the sewing machine business is collapsing. Let's tear it down and build something else. Meanwhile, while the Kilbowie Clydebank plant in Scotland would eventually surpass U.S. production, from its opening in 1884 to 1943, the Kilbowie factory produced approximately 36 million sewing machines. Singer was the world leader and sold more machines than all other makers added together. Here in Canada, this is the person who's writing the thing here, Singer opened its first Canadian plant in Montreal in 1883, and in 1906 moved to a larger facility in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec, where we now call St. John's, Newfoundland. The Singer sewing machine factory there was established in 1904. This integrated manufacturing plant produced sewing machines together with all the associated wooden furniture. At the only time, only needles were not manufactured there. Everything else was made at the plant. Again, founding it, making the cabinetry, everything up in Canada. Machines made there were sold in Canada and also exported to Africa and the Philippines. My first machine, a little Spartan 192K, was made at that factory.
Aw.
Unlike the U.S. factories, this factory is entirely self-sufficient. Everything was made, machines, and cabinetry. Remember, in the U.S., we've got machines being made in New Jersey, cabinets being made in Indiana. In the St. John factory in Quebec, they're making cabinets and machines all together.
So like the Kilbowie place, they're just doing everything in one spot, except they don't have to import the trees because they're in Canada, so they have trees.
Right. See, that's this part, because unlike Kilbowie, in 1922, the Singer Company decided to purchase a license to cut timber and establish a Canadian sawmill to feed the cabinet plant. In 1923, the company purchased an area of 500 square miles of mixed hardwood forest. So they bought the land, and then they had to build a railroad, 34 miles, to get the trees to the factory.
That's a lot of work for a humble household appliance. It's so much goes into these things. Like, it's just a sewing machine. It's like they built a railroad in a forest that they bought in order to make cabinets. That is a big deal. It's not just anything.
No. Okay, now here's the end of this here. In 1959, Singer moved the complete manufacture, assembly, and finishing of sewing machine cabinets from St. John to Thurso, which is where the trees were. So let's just move that. However, this was a period of declining sewing machine sales and the increasing use of plastic for machine cases. In 1964, Singer sold the entire wood facility to somebody else. Well then, so these cabinets, everybody's gaga for the machines, but they forget that a machine head by itself is pretty worthless. You can't really use it. even now, you buy an old 66, you can't just set it on the table. It's got bits hanging down that are going to twirl and whirl. It's got to be sitting in a base or a cabinet. What's a base? A base is what it sounds like. The machine sits in a shallow base, and then a top comes over the top and clicks on or latches on. This is your portable sewing machine. If you don't have a cabinet, you've got a portable. Now, you've seen the Singer, the wooden dome mailbox kind. There's a bunch of other, every manufacturer had their own beautiful wooden base and case assembly. And you take the top off and you'd unclip the hand crank, and there you go. You're ready to sew. So even after electricity, that same format was used. The machine sits in a base and a lid clips over the top. This time you take the lid off, you unwind the cords, and you plug it in. So where does this go? You have to set it on a table, right? But the table's wobbling, so there's the whole, it's not as good as a cabinet, but it doesn't take up as much room, and it's much more portable. When I was selling machines, people would come in, and the idea was you sold them the machine, but you got to sell them a case or a cabinet too. Even though the modern machines could just sort of be set on a table, a cabinet really increases your sewing pleasure. Trust me, it's at the right height. It's sturdy. It's got a big flat area for your fabric. You've got all these drawers for your stuff. You might even have a knee lever or an integrated foot switch to control the speed. None of those messy cables hanging out. Or even the treadle, if you're on a treadle machine, the pedal part and the wheel and everything, you can either see it or it can be completely enclosed. When one of these is all folded up, you wouldn't know it was a sewing machine. Oh, what a lovely credenza, or whatever. Armoire.
Pretty little bedside table. Why is it so heavy? Anyway.
So you didn't want to leave, you don't want to leave them out all the time. You want to fold them in. Remember, they're heavy. A lot of these elaborate cabinets, you open the top lid and there's a system of chains and springs. The machine will rise up out of the cabinet, so you don't have to reach in there and yank it up. Nowadays, there's electric models of that. You open the lid, you push a button, the machine comes up on a platform.
Schmancy.
Ooh, can we put modern machines in old cabinets? Vice versa? No. Why? Free arm. You look at the old machine, it's a flat surface, right? Think of a free arm machine. It's got the little tubular bits you can put sleeves and pant legs and things on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't have the hinges. Remember how the old machines, they've got a hinge pins that the machine has a hole and the camera has a pin and there's a screw that holds them together, and that's that. But a free arm machine isn't built that way. It doesn't have that big bed. So modern sewing machine cabinets have a platform that sits down. Okay, there's the cutout where the machine goes, and there's a platform for the machine to sit on. And you can adjust that height for different models. But then what about all that space around the free arm? Well, then they sell these things called filler plates that fit each machine, so it'll fill that space right there. I like just a flat machine is flat. However, Elna Supermatic came up with a case. 1950s. The machine goes into the case. The case is metal. Looks like an ammunition box. We've talked about this before. Or a camp stove or something.
Yeah. You showed me one. It's so cool.
Yeah. It's metal. You open the latch, take out the machine, unfold the case all the way, and it fits up against the machine really neatly around the machine's free arm and gives you this huge sewing space for a portable. I think that is one of the neatest features. There's even a little table you can buy to fit around a featherweight. So you sit your featherweight on the table and you sit this table around it, and it makes an even sewing area. So what is a cabinet and a case and an extension table? Transporting and protecting your sewing machine, that's a good reason to have a case. Okay, if your machine's sitting home in a cabinet, it's not going anywhere, throw an old t-shirt over it to keep the dust off. But if you're taking it to quilt class or something, you need a case. You need some kind of a case. And here comes a little bit about featherweights. Mm-hmm. The notorious featherweight case stench.
I just bought a featherweight and the case
stinks. What can I do? And everybody comes up with their favorite remedies of dryer sheets and baking soda and sunshine and vinegar and herbs, and it doesn't do anything but make it smell like lavender stench. What is the stench? A lot of the old wooden cases that are covered with a vinyl type paper, the glue that puts that paper on is hide glue. It's used in old furniture manufacturing. It's still used in musical instruments. And it was the glue of choice back to glue the papers onto the wood of sewing machine cases in the 40s and 50s. I don't know why the featherweight is so bad. Probably because the case latches up so tightly and people stick them away somewhere. But that glue, it's organically rotting. And that's what that smell is. And really, the only way to get rid of it is to take that paper and glue off the case and refinish it, recover it. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about how to custom recover your own featherweight case. But I'm going to tell you how to get that crap off. Vinegar. Vinegar dissolves hide glue. About the only thing that will. Hot water and vinegar. So I take a rags and soak it in hot water and vinegar and just drape it over that whole case and let it soak overnight. And then it'll scrape off. It's mucilaginous and disgusting. Ew. But I stripped a featherweight case like that, and then I redid it with bottled linseed oil, and it's beautiful. I mean, this cheap wood, it's not anything like the old school, beautiful wooden cases from hand cranks in the 1880s and 90s. And if you find one of those, and it's been stored in the basement right next to the featherweight, and all the wood has kind of come apart, oh, this is terrible. Cases and cabinets, if they're stored in barns or basements or garages, anywhere where it's damp, hide glue. That's what furniture glue was then, hide glue. As we saw in my vinegar and wet towel thing, hide glue, when it is damp, it lets go. So that's why you'll see a cabinet top that looks like a spanakopita with all the layers just exploding.
Right, just totally delaminating at every level.
Delaminating, yeah. And the little cases or bases and case tops, all the pieces are there, but they've come apart. What to do? If you want to be super authentic, you can still buy hide glue and work with it. I use Elmer's. I use Elmer's and bicycle inner tube rubber bands to glue things back together and hold them that way. What do I do about nasty finishes on old cases and cabinets? Again, you furniture refinish people are going to screech. I get Howard's Restore Finish in 4/0 steel wool, and I scrub it down, and then I put feed and wax on it. It looks great. If you want to refinish fine furniture, go for it, but don't let this is the way it's done. You have to do it this way. Do it so it looks good, doesn't stink, smells nice, and it holds up your sewing machine. So when you're pedaling 250 stitches an inch, it's going to hold together.
Right. Understanding the purpose of the repairs can help focus you if you're getting lost in perfectionistic rabbit holes. Remember what the mission is. Is the mission to make it look authentic for a period piece, or is the mission to make it functional and to not smell gross?
That is a good line to draw. Because it's easy to get, especially if you're doing a lot of internet research on how to refinish wood, you're going to find the wood police, just like you find the quilt police or any other police that think that their way is the best way, the only way, and how dare you put Howard's Restore Finish on that. Well, it was in the burn pile before I rescued it,
Right.
Fuck off.
Right.
I painted my featherweight pink and I did my table with Howard's Restore Finish. Speaking of tables and featherweights, there is another piece of sewing furniture that you may have heard of or you may encounter, which is the card table that Singer came out with in the 50s. Okay, so it's post-war, lots of houses, new houses, and they're small. There's nowhere to put a sewing machine cabinet. Portable sewing machines and little portable tables to go with them were a thing. And the featherweight table actually works quite well with the machine. It's a sturdy card table, but it's got this little cutout in the top, and you pull that cutout out, and there's a little cradle for the machine to just sit right down evenly in. It's a great system. So if you're out looking for those in your thrift store, look back by where they stick card tables and look for one with a funny little cutout in it. They sell for about $200, but they're hard to ship, so you want to find one yourself.
Sure.
They also make one that fits the 301, but same thing. It's a card table with metal legs and a wooden top. I found one once for $5 stuck in amongst a bunch of other cheap card tables.
Wow. Here's a card table with the bite taken out of it. Anyway, moving on.
If you do buy, you said, okay, you're decided now. I want a machine with a cabinet. I'm going to go to the thrift store and look at those cabinets. Now, usually they often don't even have the machines up. They just look like some kind of weird dresser table. But look for the double top. Why is there two pieces of wood there? Well, because one of them opens up. Oh, a lot of people will get a piece of furniture and think, oh, it's a heavy end table and never realize there's a machine inside.
That's wild to me. They're so awkwardly top heavy. Like, I have to investigate why this table was built so oddly. Like, why would you make a table that's so top heavy? That seems like a tipping hazard. Surely there's a reason.
Yeah, some of those really simple nightstand type cabinets that are just 4 legs and a box on top with a machine in, those are like, yeah, what's that? But even if you don't put a machine in, those are built so heavy you can put an aquarium on them.
I do remember that. I do remember your two hobbies kind of merging into this beautiful visual like Picasso mess of like, it's a sewing machine stand with cichlids on top.
A purpose-built sewing machine furniture is very sturdy. If you look inside the old cabinets, they're put together with glue and screws and cast iron brackets and a lot of it. I weigh near 200 pounds, and I can easily stand on top of any vintage sewing machine cabinet to reach up and do stuff. They're sturdy. They don't move. They don't wiggle. So even the little card table was designed for a sewing machine. Okay, so you've decided you want one. So you go and look, oh my gosh, there's a nice cabinet. They come in so many styles. There's a mid-century look with the little metal ends on the legs and the blonde wood. But look inside, is the machine in there? Oh, I really like the cabinet, but it doesn't have a machine. Will it fit my other machine? Oh, that's a good question. You got to measure the pins. Remember we talked about the pins, the pinholes on the back of your machine.
For the hinges. For
the hinge pins. Now, Singer, I think, is pretty much 9.5 inches. I'm not sure about their smaller machines, the 99, etc. Kenmore and White have a complete different bed set. It's best, unless you're really into measuring and looking at stuff, buy a machine that's in a cabinet. It's probably wired in there, so you want to make sure you check the wiring. And there's probably a knee lever, because that's so much more convenient than chasing the little mousy thing all over the floor. And when you look at that cabinet, look in the drawers. A lot of times there is stuff in the drawers that is just, like we talked about the Gewurz special, how it had archaeological layers of
right,
stuff in the drawers. And also, is there a matching, most of these cabinets came with a matching stool, which is really also, I've got 2 or 3 of these that don't have cabinets, but I have the stools because they are burly as heck. And the lid lifts off and there's storage underneath. So the stools are cool.
Yay, we love sewing room furniture.
Oh, yeah. So to wrap this all up, your sewing machine is just a head. It needs to be in a case or a cabinet or even have some sort of purpose-built table. Oh, purpose-built. You're going to build your sewing room? Build your own table, the right height for you, where you want it to be. Is that beyond you? Yeah, but my partner's doing it for me, so I'm so lucky.
Or you can do like what you helped me do in my sewing room and just screw different cabinet leaves together. So that way they make like a continuous table with very little height difference, and you can't fold them down anymore, but also, everything's very sturdy and locked together. And the tables that kind of wiggle a little bit, like brace each other, and then neither of them wiggle, and it's great.
Yes. It's a whole sewing system. I just want to say one thing about modern sewing furniture. It's made of melamine laminate over chipboard, and it's usually white. It looks like computer furniture, even cheesier. I don't care for it at all. It's not meant to last. I think there's so many good sewing machine cabinets out there. Look in thrift stores. Unfortunately, I know a few sewing machine collectors who have too many cabinets, so many that they actually make burn piles out of them.
Yeah.
It's really sad, but true. So treat your machine to a cabinet. If it's a treadle, you don't have any choice. If it's a treadle, you got to do it. And don't forget to service those stand bearings. Refer back to our Davis episode, I think is where we talked about that. But I hope this has given you a little insight onto your sewing machine needs a home. Make it a pretty one. Make it sturdy. And probably won't pay more than $10 or $20 for a cabinet by itself. Like I said, though, better to buy one with a machine in it. Stay threaded.
And there you have it, a history lesson about sewing machine cases and cabinets, topped off with tips on acquiring and restoring secondhand finds. Sewing machines are only as useful as the needle they move and as the surface they are resting on or in. We learned about the solid wood furniture industry of South Bend, Indiana, the hilariously fumbled opportunity of furniture makers of the 1860s, Singer's various strategies for cabinet production and distribution, and why some cases like the featherweight smell so completely terrible. TR imparted practical tips on managing that smell and also told us about the special Singer card table that can sometimes be found in the wild. I was shocked at how shocked I was by the scale of lumber needed to keep up with the need for sewing machine furniture. It's one of those things you just don't think about until suddenly you do, and it pales in comparison to other industries like home building. But still, that was a very eye-opening moment for me this week. As a reminder, we are unofficially sponsored by Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine, who do repairs and restorations. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and you can support us by sharing the podcast with your friends, and also with money, at patreon.com/used2sew. Thank you for listening to us here at Used to Sew. We always welcome your additions, corrections, and feedback in general. Please reach out to us via email at usedtosew@gmail.com. Used to Sew is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.